All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived in a train of thought. Let's talk about the wild card round, super wild card round, if you will, and then we'll get into the divisional round picks. That's why this video is coming out so late, so I can get the divisional round picks out early or late, if you will. Anyway, let's get to business. First, let's talk about the Chargers and the Texans, and there's a reason why I never really loved Justin Herbert, to be honest, and I think it's because I don't really trust him in big games. He didn't really show up in a lot of the big ones in college, and in the NFL so far, he's 0-2 in the playoffs with pristine conditions, and though he's lesser of the reason why they lost the Jacksonville game, he's the primary reason why they lost this one. 4 NLs though, one was at the end and one wasn't his fault, but 4 NLs, so 4 NLs, all of them backbreaking and devastating. And it wasn't like the Texans were much better because they turned over the ball 3 times themselves, but just back-breaking mistakes by Herbert and the sacks because the Chargers' allegedly good offensive line was no match for the Texans' pass rush, and it was an abject disaster once Houston decided not to let the Chargers score anymore. Maybe it was because of the dirty bubble. I think we have to give a game ball to the dirty bubble for the Texans because after said bubble emerged, the Texans outscored the Chargers 32-6, and it was not good. It was not good at all for LA. Houston moves on in their annual wild card round game at home. They always seem to host the first game of the playoffs, and there you have it. They are going to the next round, and they're going to go to Kansas City because this was an expected outcome. This beatdown that was administered by the Ravens was also merciful because I don't think anyone wanted to see the Steelers play anymore. Not with the way they played the last month. Not the way they played and looked really bad against some heavyweight contenders and the Bengals over the last month and change where it was no bueno from the word go for Pittsburgh. Once Baltimore jumped on them, it was GG's. And we were done here. Derrick Henry mauled them. Lamar Jackson did his thing. It was a wrap pretty much from there. Pittsburgh, to the credit, did fight back somewhat in the second half, but at no point in said half did we think that Pittsburgh was actually going to come back and win. Baltimore, take your win as you needed to. Lamar played well, and now you move onward and upward to the next game against Buffalo. This is the divisional round matchup we all wanted. And for the first, let's say, 7 minutes of this game, it looked a little dicey. Denver went right down the field with relative ease. And Bo Nix with a beautiful touchdown pass to Troy Franklin. And Denver actually looked respectable. Then Buffalo woke up and said, all right, that's enough of that. And Buffalo beat a very obviously overmatched Denver Bronco team. It was not a shameful performance by Denver. They were just badly outclassed. And Josh Allen did his thing. The defense did their thing. Denver didn't score again for the rest of this game. And it was just an easy beat down for the Bills. They took care of their business. Lamar versus Josh Allen obviously is your main event for the divisional round. I'll get into that later. Denver, no shame in going out like this. You overachieved and you made the playoffs in Bo Nix's rookie year. Good work on your part. You got something to build on, especially because the dead cap is going to start to get cleaned up a bit with the Russell Wilson situation. Good work. Keep it going. You've got something. Buffalo, you've also got something. A showdown with the Ravens. Now that the AFC business has been taken care of, let's get to the NFC portion of this. First, let's get this out the way. No question it was helmet to helmet, and no question Keyshawn Nixon actually recovered the ball. Green Bay got screwed on the opening kickoff. There's no way to say this. Green Bay got screwed at the end because that was pass interference. It should have been first and goal at the 1, and Josh Jacobs inevitably running in a touchdown, taking his down 0-1 score game. All the stuff in between, the Eagles were the better team, and there's no other way to say that. They weren't a great team. They weren't a perfect team. Jalen Hurts was not all that spectacular, and really, honestly, not all that good either. To be fair, it was Saquon Barkley and the defense that did a lot of the heavy lifting. It was so much to the point where A.J. Brown's reading a book, and said book is now a bestseller on Amazon. It's kind of wild. But in any event, this was a very good performance by Barkley and the Eagle defense. They took care of their business, and they took care of it very effectively, and basically made the performance by Jalen Hurts an afterthought, to be honest. Jordan Love wasn't very good either. A lot of missed throws, and in some cases, it's not truly his fault because there were a lot of Green Bay Packer injuries going into and coming out of this game. This was kind of a mini body bag game, if you will. Not a good look for the Packers, and the Eagles will move on. As ugly as it was at times, they will move onward and upward to the divisional round. This was easily the best game of the weekend, and it didn't take much for it to be the best game of the weekend because 4 of the other 5 were beatdowns, and the Eagles game never felt that close, to be honest. This was a fun game between Daniels and Baker Mayfield and their crews. This was entertaining because the Commanders took so many risks. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. And it was also entertaining because Tampa Bay, whenever they got the ball, and they didn't really have it that much, they were very efficient. Bucky Irving did his thing, and Mike Evans versus Marshall Lattimore was an easy knockout by Evans. Evans took care of business in the one-on-one matchup, and he made it look, you already knew what time it was. Like you knew what was going to happen. You knew how this was going to go down. And it was a really fun game, and it looked like it was going to be a Tampa Bay win until the fumble happens. The fumble happens, the Buccaneers lose it, the Commanders get it back, and the Commanders don't miss. They proceed to score, and all they needed was the ball back one time, but the game tied, and that's what they got. They got the game tied back, and then Jaden Daniels said, we're winning this game, we're winning it now. Tampa Bay, regardless of how hard they tried, could not stop Daniels when they absolutely needed to stop Daniels, who's becoming an incredibly clutch, late-game quarterback. And then they got a little bit of luck with the doink, but Washington was the better team when they absolutely had to be the better team. Commanders move on, Tampa goes home, and what was a really fun matchup. And now, the number of the day is 9. 9 points by the Vikings, 9 sacks allowed by said Vikings. This was a brutal performance by the Vikings offensive line. This was a brutal performance by Sam Darnold as well. The Rams took care of their business, even though it wasn't a true home game. The Rams did handle business like they should have. Matt Stafford, who also wears number 9, did take care of his. He didn't have to do too much, just don't crash the car. He did not. He drove it effectively and efficiently. We got the obligatory Kyren Williams touchdown, because of course we did, and we got very good performances overall by, really efficient performances, not, I wouldn't say good, by the Rams offense, because they didn't need to do too much, but the defense took care of the business. Jared Verse is becoming more of a menace by the week. He absolutely is your defensive rookie of the year. He's been like that the entire season. The Rams do not miss with their drafts lately. Anyway, Rams handle theirs. They go on to the divisional round. Minnesota's really exciting 14-win season is for naught. They do nothing with it. They don't win a playoff game. They basically had 2 of them in an 8-day span, and Sam Darnold was disastrous in both. Only 1 offensive touchdown was scored, and for the Vikings, it's got to be a very painful experience because they won 14 games. They went 14-0 against teams not named the Lions or the Rams. Unfortunately, they have 4 losses against them, and that's why they didn't win a playoff game. They didn't get the number 1 seed, and they're not playing the Commanders this weekend. So that is Super Wild Card Weekend. It was mostly beatdowns, but we did get football, which is never a bad thing. I went 5-1 in the picks, and now we're going to jump right into the divisional round and start talking about the AFC battle. That will be the Chiefs and the Texans. Kansas City, your season effectively starts now. Your title defense effectively starts now. And it's against a familiar opponent that you played about 3 weeks ago. The next to last real game that you guys had was this game, and it was these Texans. And it was heartbreaking for Houston because once Tank Dell got hurt, they never recovered. The Texans were never the same. Their defense was admirable. They actually showed up in that game. It's just their emotional state was nowhere near what it needed to be once Tank Dell broke his leg again, or had his leg injury. He basically broke his leg. It was just not there. Now, I'm just wondering where Houston's going to get their points if their defense doesn't score them. I think we're all wondering this, honestly. And for Kansas City, where are you going to get your points? Because the Chiefs' offense also struggles. It's on the board that this is a 20-14 game to me. And it's on the board that Houston can win this game. They're going to have to force turnovers, though. Kansas City doesn't turn over the ball. They haven't in what seems like forever. It's only really been about a couple months. Ultimately, I do think Kansas City is going to win. I'm going to stick with the 20-14 score that I just outlined. Give me 20-14 Chiefs. I do think Houston's defense will put up a fight. I just don't think their offense has enough firepower. Saturday night in Detroit. So the Lions are going to be the last team to play in these playoffs. Number 1 seed in the NFC against Jada Daniels and the Commanders. A Commander team that doesn't seem afraid of this. It doesn't seem shook by the moment. It doesn't seem shook by the road atmospheres that they're about to face. This is going to be something different, and I'm looking forward to how different this is going to be. Both these offenses can get busy. David Montgomery coming back is a huge deal. The Lions actually getting healthy is a huge deal. And that's a bad, bad problem to have for a Commander team whose defense can be spotty, especially against the run. Marshall Lattimore versus Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lattimore's going to have to play a whole lot better than what he did against Mike Evans, who absolutely destroyed him last week. Ultimately, I think this is a matter and a case of wrong place, wrong time for the Commanders. Detroit feels like the better team. Detroit needs to play like the better team. Give me a score of 34-23. I think the Lions are going to take care of business here. I do think Washington will put up a fight for a lot of this game. Ultimately, I just don't think they have enough horses. So 34-23, Detroit takes care of business, and they host the NFC Championship game against the winner of the Eagles and the Rams. The Rams World Tour continues. Instead of hosting, obviously, their game last week, they had to go to Arizona. Instead, now they have to come to the Link, and they're going to have to deal with the snow that is possibly coming. That's not a great look, and there's been some stats about Matt Stafford playing outdoors, and it's not good. And obviously, Stafford's played pretty much all of his home games in domes, and he's played a lot of his games in domes, to be honest, even in the NFC North, where they played a lot of years and a lot of games in Minnesota. So, yeah, they play in domes, they play in the West Coast, they don't really play in the cold too much. Do I think that will affect them? Somewhat, yes. But ultimately, I think even on a neutral field, and even in LA, as we saw, the Eagles are just a better team. I don't trust Jalen Hurts as a passer. I never really did. And I think that Saquon Barkley won't go off like he did the last time these two teams played, where he had over 300 yards of offense. But I do think the Eagles are slightly better in this game. McVay and Stafford, I think, are better than Hurts and Sirianni, but that's not saying much. I think everybody's going to think that. The Rams' defensive line is serious. I just don't know if they're experienced enough to deal with the Eagles' offensive line. Give me a really good game here. Ultimately, the Eagles' defense makes the final stand. Give me 27-20 Eagles. I think it'll be a fun game. I think it'll be an entertaining game. I think it'll be a nail-biting game. But the Eagles' defense is what brings them to Detroit for the NFC Championship game. But now let's get to the main event. Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. James Cook and Derrick Henry. Will Zay Flowers be back for the Ravens? Crucial question to answer there. The cold part of this game as well is going to be bitter cold, obviously. But I don't think Baltimore's going to be completely shook by it. I think Baltimore will be prepared for it to some degree. You can't really prepare for that kind of cold from Lake Erie. But I think Baltimore, for some reason, will be prepared somewhat. Same with Buffalo as well. This is going to be a fun game. I don't think it's anywhere near the beatdown that we saw earlier this year, week 4, where Derrick Henry took the first carry to the crib and the Bills never got off the mat. This was Mike Tyson fight in the 80s, where Tyson destroyed him early and this game was over pretty much immediately. I don't think this game is going to end immediately, but I do think it ends the same. Baltimore wins. Give me something along the lines of 27-24. Justin Tucker hits a game-winning kick and reminds people that he's like that and is going to the Hall of Fame. Tucker hits the game-winning kick, 27-24 Ravens, and what I think will be an incredible game that lives up to the hype. I just think Baltimore's overall the better team. Josh Allen will do everything he can, but the Ravens defense is not what the Ravens defense was at the start of the year, and even then they dominated Allen. This was not just about Derrick Henry getting 200 yards on the ground against the Bills defense that was diminished based off what is compared to what it's going to be on Sunday. This was also about Baltimore's defense playing a really good game. Their defense has played a whole lot better since, and I think the Ravens defense is going to take care of business in this game here. So one more time for your minds. I got 20-14 Chiefs beating the Texans. I got 34-23 Lions beating the Commanders. I've got 27-20 Eagles over Rams. Same 27 for the Ravens, but 24 for the Bills. So Baltimore's the one road team I think wins this weekend. What are your picks? How did you do last week? Post them below. And you already know that Kansas City will be the first stop of my next train of thought.